there were some issues in the academy, and this is what I found really interesting, because we've been focusing so much on the individual level, on the training context, on the training drills, on what we can do on the pitch. And we have overlooked so far, we have ignored the impact that other things within the organization may have on creativity. I think this is something that it's interesting to look. A lot of the academies nowadays, and this is not exclusive to this academy, are using what I call biometric profiling to exclude players or to select players from a very, very early age. One of the most common, and maybe you have come across, is a bone density test. So this idea of trying to predict how tall you're going to be when you are an adult player. So they do this kind of bone density test, like usually a wrist or I don't know, there might be other ways to do it. But they do this tests in this club, they were doing it for goalkeepers, for center backs, and for strikers. So if you were predicted to have less than 1.85 meters, you would be kicked out. And this sends a message in terms of what are the beliefs, you know, in terms of the development of creativity, etc. The other interesting thing that was a bit problematic was the salary structure in the academy. So the under 13 coach got maybe half of what the under 15s coach got, and then even less than the under 17s and less than the under 19s. And if you think of this maybe in the traditions of football, okay, that might be normal, but that sends a message that maybe those age groups in which creativity or creative learning is maybe so more important, maybe they're not really that important if you think about it from a sport management or from an organizational perspective. And the other thing is that then coaches, because they want to climb the ladder, they want to get more money, you know, then he's going to start behaving in a way that he wants to get noticed. It's not so much about the players or the player long-term development. It's also then about how can I show myself? And usually the way it works is by showing results, you know. So then there's another vicious cycle. There's this idea that I'm going to select the tallest. I'm going to select the ones that give me the you know, the guarantee of achieving faster results. And this can be constraints for creativity. Then something that is not worth it to spend too much time on, because this is one of the typical, at least in the Portuguese reality, but I'm pretty sure is quite universal, has to do with the parental pressure. You know, the club had to forbid the parents from attending training because they used to train like openly, and you would have parents, you know, parent coaches. I've watched matches in which the parents were, the coach was saying one thing, on the other side the parent was saying another thing. And yeah, it's quite prevalent, you know, that parents kind of, sometimes parents want it more than the kids themselves, and you get a lot of this air dryer talk in the car, and he's always afraid of making mistakes, of taking risks. So it sticks to basically the basics, because he always gets this talk after the matches. Then there was the issue of more at the end of the season, you know, because there were always new players coming for trials. So you could see that the players who were there already, they lived in a constant fear of being released or being kicked out. So they tended as well, especially in this period, to stick to what they thought was expected of them. So they didn't really want to try new things and take risks. You know, you could see when the head of scouting was in the training, or when the head of coach was in the training, that players were a lot more stiff, that the environment was much more serious. And there was not really a lot happening in this professional academy in terms of opportunities for coaches to debate, to discuss, to talk between themselves. There was this big rivalry between coaches, you know. It's like almost everyone wanted to take the job of the guy that is above them, that is better paid, and this was problematic. And the other thing is, all right, academies are nowadays responsible for providing the conditions that say for players to develop, and they have an interest on players being creative because creativity has a commercial value, let's say, because it's something difficult to achieve. It's more valuable in terms of money. So academies would have an interest in developing more creative players. The problem is academies nowadays even have schools inside the academy. So what I've realized in there is that the players didn't know anything or anyone outside the academy. They didn't have any other activities that didn't involve being with the same people all the time. There were not really opportunities for any kind of differentiation. And over time, these players were becoming the same, you know, and then the scout was wondering why, you know. So I think it's really important to start thinking of creativity not only in terms of a property of the individual, but as something that needs to become what the Danish guy called Rasmussen in Aalborg says, a developmental resource, in the sense that creativity, in order to be developed effectively, needs to become something that is part of the whole organizational culture, that is present in every department, and that is actually lived from the CEO, from the president, from the chairman, down to the coaches, to the psychologists, to the players, and obviously to the parents. There's a paper from 2010, Memmer, Baker, and Batch. They look into the connection between attention, expertise, and creativity. And there was one line there that made me want to do my PhD on creativity, because they said this sentence, and I know it by heart: creativity can only occur in the defensive, in the offensive phase. Creativity can only occur in attack. And I thought, I don't agree with this. So that was kind of what motivated me to do. Important distinction to make here on creativity as well. There's something called incremental creativity, and there's something called radical creativity. There are two modes of creativity. So you can be creative by adding a little something, you know, not necessarily something wow, but adding something small, or you can do something really disruptive, something that is a wow factor, and both things are considered creative. There is maybe, you know, a higher focus on discipline on creativity, but as a very famous player called Bernardo Silva said to me, it's like, if everything is perfect, there might not be a lot of room for defenders to be creative, or to need to be creative, to work outside of the, but in the end, you're dealing with humans, and you know that shit happens, let's say. So if we grow up with this idea of, we allow the young players to grow up with this idea that you are a defender, you're not supposed to be, then it's almost like that thing of the relative age effect of, you know, this kind of self-fulfilling prophecies. Then they're not going to be creative, because it's also not stimulated. It's also not stimulated in them. You know, it's really about this idea that I think it's important to demystify. You know, this idea that creativity, it's only like the magic. You know, only about the dribble, only about the skill. You know, the wow thing. I think if you grow up with creativity as this idea of developmental resource, as something, you know, embedded that you can tap to when needed, I think it doesn't really matter if you're a defender or an attacker, if you have the ball or you have no ball. Because, for example, as a defender, it's not that you're just a passive, you know, it's not that you don't have any kind of agency when you're dealing with an attacker. It's a relationship. As a defender, the way you move your body, the way you kind of act might constrain. You can limit the agency of your opponent. It's not just because he has the ball that you're just there. You know, he might have some like some enhanced decision making ability, but it's not like you and these are the ideas, you see. If we grow up with these kind of beliefs ingrained in our minds, that I am position X, I can only do this. And this is also a way that we can think about creativity in within academies and as coaches, you know. Sometimes players want the opportunities, or even we can be proactive in the sense of making them experience new positions. You don't need, and this is me a bit sometimes being a bit overly critical, but I'm not sure when you think about differential learning, for example, you know, you saw the guys doing all those kind of,
Yeah.
those were definitely creative researchers and creative coaches, whatever, you know. You can, you know, you can put your hands on the floor, do things with the head down, you can do all these things, you know, but you can also do little things like uh, change the player in a position in a training, whatever, you know. And by doing that, you're already creating new constraints. You're already creating new opportunities for action and for the player to explore, you know, different behaviors, different opportunities.